and when I asked Robertson, he merely shrugged his shoulders and intimated that he took no interest in the matter. The truth is that nothing moved the man, whose whole soul was wrapped in one desire, namely to rescue or avenge the daughter against whom he knew he had so sorely sinned. In fact, this loose living but reformed seaman was becoming a monomaniac and, what is more, one of the religious type. He had a Bible with him that had been given to him by his mother when he was a boy, and in this he read constantly. Also he was always on his knees, and at night I could hear him groaning and praying aloud. Doubtless, now that the change of drink had fallen off him, the instincts and the blood of the dour old Covenanters from whom he was descended were asserting themselves. In a way this was a good thing, though for some time past I had feared lest it should end in his going mad, and certainly as a companion he was more cheerful in his unregenerate days. Abandoning speculation as useless and taking my chance of being murdered where I lay, for after all Billali's followers were singularly like the men with whom we had been fighting and for aught I knew might be animated by identical objects, I just went to sleep, as I can do at any time, to wake up an hour or so later feeling wonderfully refreshed. Hans, who when I closed my eyes was already asleep, slumbering at my feet curled up like a dog on a spot where the sun struck hotly, roused me by saying, "Awake, Baas, they are here." I sprang up, snatching at my rifle, for I thought that he meant that we were being attacked again, to see Billali advancing at the head of a train of 4 litters made of bamboo with grass mats for curtains and coverings, each of which was carried by stalwart Amahagger, as I supposed that they must be. 2 of these, the finest, Billali indicated were for Robertson and myself, and the 2 others for the wounded. Umslopogaas and the remaining Zulus evidently were expected to walk, as was Hans. "How did you make these so quickly?" I asked, surveying their elegant and indeed artistic workmanship. "We did not make them, Watcher by Night. We brought them with us folded up. She who commands looked in her glass and said that 4 would be needed, besides my own which is yonder, 2 for white lords and 2 for wounded black men, which you see is the number required." "Yes," I answered vaguely, marvelling what kind of a glass it was that gave the lady this information. Before I could inquire upon the point, Billali added, "You will be glad to learn that my men caught some of those rebels who dared to attack you, 8 or 10 of them who had been hurt by your missiles or axe cuts, and put them to death in the proper fashion. Yes, quite the proper fashion," and he smiled a little. "The rest had gone too far where it would have been dangerous to follow them among the rocks. Enter now, my lord Watcher by Night, for the road is steep." "And we must travel fast if we would reach the place where she who commands is camped in the ancient holy city before the moon sinks behind the cliffs to night." So having explained matters to Robert and Umslopogaas, who announced that nothing would induce him to be carried like an old woman or a corpse upon a shield, and seen that the hurt Zulus were comfortably accommodated, Robertson and I got into our litters, which proved to be delightfully easy and restful. Then, when our gear was collected by the hook-nosed bearers to whom we were obliged to trust, though we kept with us our rifles and a certain amount of ammunition, we started. First went a number of Billali's spearmen. Then came the litters with the wounded alongside of which Umslopogaas and his 3 uninjured Zulus talked or trotted. Then another litter containing Billali, then my own by which ran Hans and Robertson's, and lastly the rest of the Amahagger and the relief bearers. "I see now, Baas," said Hans, thrusting his head between my curtains.
that yonder white beard cannot be your reverend father, the Predikant, after all?"
"Why not?" I asked, though the fact was fairly obvious.
"Because, Baas, if he were he would not have left Hans, of whom he always thought so well, to run in the sun like a dog, while he and the others travel in carriages like great white ladies."
"You had better save your breath instead of talking nonsense, Hans," I said, "since I believe that you have a long way to go." In fact it proved to be a very long way indeed, especially as after we began to breast the mountain we must travel slowly. We started about 10 o'clock in the morning, for the fight, which after all did not take long, had, it will be remembered, begun shortly after dawn, and it was 3 in the afternoon before we reached the base of the towering cliff which I have mentioned. Here, at the foot of a remarkable, isolated column of rock, on which I was destined to see a strange sight in the after days, we halted and ate of the remaining food which we had brought with us, while the Amahagger consumed their own, that seemed to consist largely of curdled milk, such as the Zulus call maas, and lumps of a kind of bread. I noted that they were a very curious people, who fed in silence and on whose handsome, solemn faces one never saw a smile. Somehow it gave me the creeps to look at them. Robertson was affected in the same way, for in one of the rare intervals of his abstraction he remarked that they were "no canny." Then he added, "Ask yon old wizard, who might be one of the Bible prophets come to life, what those man eating devils have done with my daughter." I did so, and Billali answered, "Say that they have taken her away to make a queen of her, since having rebelled against their own queen they must have another who is white. Say too that she who commands will wage war on them and perhaps win her back, unless they kill her first." "Ah," Robertson repeated when I had translated, "unless they kill her first, or worse." Then he relapsed into his usual silence. Presently we started on again, heading straight for what looked like a sheer wall of black rock 1,000 feet or more in height, up a path so steep that Robertson and I got out and walked, or rather scrambled, in order to ease the bearers. Billali, I noticed, remained in his litter. The convenience of the bearers did not trouble him. He only ordered an extra gang to the poles. I could not imagine how we were to negotiate this precipice, nor could Umslopogaas, who looked at it and said, "If we are going to climb that, Macumazahn, I think that the only one who will live to get to the top will be that little yellow monkey of yours," and he pointed with his axe at Hans.
"If I do,"
replied that worthy, much nettled, for he hated to be called a yellow monkey by the Zulus,
"be sure that I will roll down stones upon any black butcher whom I see sprawling upon the cliff below."
Umslopogaas smiled grimly, for he had a sense of humour and could appreciate a repartee even when it hit him hard. Then we stopped talking, for the climb took all our breath. At length we came to the cliff face where, to all appearance, our journey must end. Suddenly, however, out of the blind black wall in front of us started the apparition of a tall man armed with a great spear and wearing a white robe, who challenged us hoarsely. Suddenly he stood before us as a ghost might do, though whence he came we could not see. Presently the mystery was explained. Here in the cliff face there was a cleft, though one invisible even from a few paces away, since its outer edge projected over the inner wall of rock. Moreover, this opening was not above 4 feet in width, a mere split in the huge mountain mass, caused by some titanic convulsion in past ages. For it was a definite split since, once entered, far, far above could be traced a faint line of light coming from the sky, although the gloom of the passage was such that torches, which were stored at hand, must be used by those who threaded it. One man could have held the